Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be talking about a woman called Katherine Knight. I just want to give a content warning as this case is pretty disturbing and it may not be suitable for everyone to listen to, so I just want you guys to proceed with caution. Also, I have a feeling this case is going to be pretty long, so grab your drinks, grab your snacks. This is a journey that we're going to take together. Let's jump into the case. So first of all, I just want to tell you a bit about Katherine's childhood. Katherine's mother, Barbara, was married to a man named Jack and they lived in Aberdeen, New South Wales in Australia. Barbara and Jack had 4 sons together, but Barbara quickly became unfaithful to Jack and started an adulterous relationship with Ken Knight, who was a friend and co-worker to Jack, which is obviously pretty shady. It is said that the two families were well known within the community and that the affair caused an absolute uproar, which led Barbara and Ken to move to Moore. Although Barbara had 4 sons, none of them moved with her. Her 2 oldest sons stayed with their father, Jack, whilst the 2 youngest boys went to live with an aunt in Sydney. Barbara and Ken went on to have 4 children together, including twin girls, born the 24th of October 1955 in Tenterfield, and Katherine was one of these twin girls. Sadly, in 1959, when Katherine was just 4 years old, Jack died and the 2 eldest boys that had been living with him moved in with Barbara and Ken. Ken was described as an alcoholic and would often use violence to intimidate and rape Barbara up to 10 times a day. Because of this, Barbara would tell her daughters in detail her sex life and how much she hated men and sex. Later on in Katherine's life, when she was dating a guy, her partner wanted her to take part in a sex act that she did not want to perform. She didn't feel comfortable with it, and she confided in her mother with this. But Barbara simply turned around and told Katherine to, and I quote, "put up with it and stop complaining." Katherine also claims that she was repeatedly sexually assaulted by several members of her family, which continued until she was 11 years old. Katherine only really had a strong relationship with her twin sister, but she also had a strong relationship with her uncle Oscar Knight. But Katherine was absolutely devastated when she learnt that Oscar had committed suicide in 1969, and she claims that her ghost still visits her. His ghost, not her ghost. So that same year, when Katherine was 14, the family moved back to Aberdeen. When Katherine attended high school, Katherine was described as a loner and a bully who would tower over small children. She is known to have assaulted at least 1 boy with a weapon, although I couldn't find out what this weapon was and what the altercation was about. And on another incident, she was also injured by a teacher who claimed to be acting in self-defense, but again, I couldn't find what the altercation was. This is all I could find out. However, when Katherine was not in these fits of rage, she was described as a model student and often earned rewards for good behaviour, which I do not understand as she was the class bully, so how does that work? Like, how do you assault someone with a weapon and then get rewarded for good behaviour? I have no words. Anyway, Katherine left school when she was 15 years old and she couldn't read or write. Her first job was working in a clothing factory, but then 12 months later she started working what she described as her dream job by working in an abattoir. Not my idea of a dream job, but anyway, let's proceed. She quickly moved up the ranks and as a promotion she was given her own set of butcher's knives. At home, Katherine would hang the knives above her bed so that, and I quote, "they would always be there if she ever needed them." End quote. Interesting. So let's have a look into Katherine's relationships because she had a lot of relationships. She was a bit of a player. So Katherine met co-worker David Kellett, I think that's how you say his last name, I'm not sure, in 1973. David is said to be a heavy drinker, which eventually led to him losing his job. However, he soon got a new job in an abattoir where he became friends with Catherine's brother. Katherine and David started a relationship, and it is said that David would also be romantically involved with her twin sister. However, I only read that on one source, so take it with a pinch of salt. Whenever David would get into a fight or an argument, it was said that Katherine would always back him up and would also join in throwing punches. So she wasn't afraid to get dirty and beat people up, basically. Katherine married David in 1974, and when the couple arrived at the wedding venue, Barbara, Katherine's mother, said to David, and I quote, now it does have a few swear words in, but I'm not going to say the swear words because they're bad, but I will try and quote it as accurately as I can. The old girl said to me to watch out. You better watch this one or she'll effing kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're effed. Don't even think on playing up on her. She'll effing kill you. And that was her mother talking. She told me she's got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. End quote. And it seemed that David should have taken this advice seriously, as on the wedding night, Katherine tried to strangle David because he fell asleep after having sex only 3 times. What sort of an excuse is that? Anyway, carry on. However, things only got worse for David as the marriage progressed, and it was said to be a very violent marriage. One night when Katherine was heavily pregnant, she burned all of David's clothes and hit him on the back of the head with a frying pan. And apparently she did this because he returned home late from a darts competition in which he made the final round. Yeah, I'm baffled. So David managed to flee from the house, but he collapsed in a neighbour's yard and he was later treated for severe skull fractures. The police wanted to charge Katherine, obviously, but she managed to persuade David into dropping all charges, so nothing ever came of the assault. In May 1976, shortly after the birth of their first child, David left the marriage for another woman as he was unable to cope with Katherine's aggressive and violent behaviour. The next day, Katherine was seen pushing her baby in the pram down a street, violently throwing the pram side to side, literally like she was trying to knock the baby out of the pram, swaying it side to side really violently. And as a result of this, Katherine was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital, where she was diagnosed with postnatal depression, and she spent several weeks there recovering. After being released, things only got worse as Katherine placed her 2-month-old baby, on railway tracks shortly before the train was due. She then proceeded to steal an axe and went into the town threatening to kill people. A man known to the town as Old Ted was foraging near the rail tracks when he saw the 2-month-old baby on the tracks, and he managed to rescue the baby literally just minutes before the train arrived. Because of her actions, Katherine was arrested and again was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital, but the following day she signed herself out as she claimed to have recovered. What? Only a few days after this, Katherine slashed the face of a woman and demanded that she drive her to Queensland to find her estranged husband. Thankfully, the woman managed to escape when they stopped at a service station. The police were called to the scene, but to their dismay, when they arrived, Katherine had taken a young boy hostage and was threatening him with a knife. The police managed to save the little boy by attacking Katherine with brooms, which is an interesting way to apprehend someone. And then she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Whilst in the hospital, Katherine told one of the nurses that she had planned to kill the mechanic at the service station as he had fixed David's car, which had allowed him to leave. Katherine then told the nurse that when she would arrive in Queensland, she had planned to kill both David and also her mother. However, when David was informed of the ordeal, he decided to leave his girlfriend and he went back with his mother to Aberdeen to support Katherine. Now, this might just be me being a bit judgmental, but if my partner had told the authorities that he wanted to kill me, there would be no way in hell that I would be going back there after he'd already attempted to murder me on our wedding night. I mean, what must have been going through this guy's mind? Like, is he superhero or something? Like Superman? Like, I don't get it. Anyway, Katherine was released on the 9th of August 1976 into the care of her mother-in-law and her husband David. They moved to Woodridge, a suburb of Brisbane, where she got a new job at Dynmore Meatworks. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. Anyway, on the 6th of March 1980, the couple had another daughter together. In 1984, Katherine left David. Yes, I know, I was surprised too that it wasn't the other way around. And she moved into her parents' house before renting a house nearby. Again, I couldn't find if her children went with her or if they stayed with David. I'm not sure. She returned to work at a nearby abattoir and rented an apartment near her work, but she injured her back the following year, which led to her leaving her job and claiming a disability pension. As she no longer needed to rent an apartment nearby her work, the government gave her a housing commission house in Aberdeen. In 1986, 2 years after leaving David, Katherine met 38-year-old David Saunders. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to refer to him as Saunders, as not to get him confused with the first husband, David, if that makes sense. So a few months after the relationship started, Saunders moved in with Katherine and her two daughters. However, he still kept his old apartment, and this caused serious jealousy for Katherine, as you can imagine, as she did not trust him when he wasn't around. And as a result of this, she would often throw him out. However, it never lasted long, as Katherine would follow him back to his apartment and beg him to return. Now, this next part of the story involves animal abuse, so if you don't want to listen, then I advise that you skip forward a couple of seconds, because it is hard to hear. So in May 1987, she took Saunders' puppy and slit its throat, simply to act as an example as to what would happen if Saunders ever had an affair. She then proceeded to knock him unconscious with a frying pan. This girl clearly likes a frying pan. However, despite all of this, Saunders stuck around. He stayed with Katherine for whatever reason. The woman must have had to have some serious charm, as she could keep these men around despite all the heinous acts that she committed. Like, honestly, talk about red flags. Anyway, in June 1998, Katherine gave birth to their third daughter, which in return prompted Saunders to put a deposit on a house so that they would have a nice family home together and for their children. Katherine managed to pay off the house when her pension came through, and she quickly started decorating the new family home. However, the decoration is definitely not to my taste, as she decorated it with animal skins, horns, skulls, animal traps, machetes and rakes, and it is said that there was no space that was left undecorated. Her marriage with Saunders was just as violent as the one with David. After one particular argument, Katherine hit Saunders in the face with an iron and then proceeded to stab him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. This resulted in Saunders moving back into his apartment. However, when he returned to the family home, he discovered that Katherine had cut up all of his clothes. Saunders went into hiding and Katherine tried really hard to find him. However, everyone claimed to have no knowledge of where Saunders was, so they were basically protecting him from this woman, which, you know, good on them. A few months passed and Saunders returned home to visit his daughters. However, it was there that Saunders realised that Katherine had gone to the police pretending to be scared of Saunders, and they actually issued her with an apprehended violence order against him. It's not long until Katherine moves on again, and in 1990, Katherine became pregnant with her fourth child by a 43-year-old former abattoir co-worker, John Chillingworth, and she gave birth the following year to a boy. I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't named any of the children, as I think it's unfair of me to name them and disclose them when it's not their fault that they were born to such a monster. That's just my personal opinion. You might disagree with that, but personally I don't feel comfortable exposing them on my channel. So back to the story. Their relationship lasted 3 years before she left him for a man that she was having an affair with, John Price. And this ended up being her last and most violent relationship yet. John Price was a father of 3 children and was described as a, quote, terrific bloke, and was well liked by everyone that knew him. His own marriage ended in 1988, and his 2-year-old daughter stayed living with his former wife whilst the 2 older children lived with him. Despite knowing Katherine's violent past, she moved into his house in 1995. His children seemed to like her, and John described life to be, quote, a bunch of roses, end quote, even though they had their fair share of violent arguments. In 1998, the couple had an argument as Katherine wanted to marry John, but he actually refused. Katherine was extremely hurt by this, and as a form of retaliation, she video recorded all of the possessions that John had stolen from his work and sent the recordings to his boss. The items included out-of-date medical kits that he had scavenged from the company bins, and this resulted in John losing his job after 17 years of working for the company. That same day, John, understandably, kicked Katherine out of the house, and news about what she had done had spread like wildfire throughout the town. However, for some unknown reason, John decided to rekindle the relationship on the terms that Katherine would not move into the family home. Unfortunately, however, the fights became even more frequent, and the majority of John's friends wanted to have nothing to do with him anymore as a result of his volatile relationship. In February 2000, the relationship took a turn for the worst. Katherine carried out a string of violent attacks on John, which included stabbing him in the chest. Finally, John was fed up with all of the fights, all of the violence, and all of the attacks, and he kicked Katherine out of the house. On the 29th of February, on his way to work, John took out a restraining order against Katherine to protect him and his children from her. That afternoon, when speaking to co-workers, John told them that if he didn't come to work the following day, it was as a result of Katherine killing him. His co-workers pleaded desperately with him not to go home, but John said that if he didn't go home, he feared that she would kill the children. When John arrived home that night, he arrived to an empty house. Katherine had sent the children away to sleep at a friend's house, and John spent the evening with his friends and neighbours before going to bed at 11 p.m. Earlier in the day, it is said that Katherine bought new black lingerie and had videotaped her children while saying crude comments. I couldn't find what the comments were, but I imagine they were pretty disturbing. Later on in that night, Katherine arrived at John's home whilst he was sleeping and sat for a while and watched the TV before taking a shower. She then woke John up to have sex with him, and after that, they fell back to sleep. The next day rolled around, and by 6 a.m, a neighbour grew concerned as his car was still in the drive. He would have usually left for work by now, and when John didn't arrive to work, his boss sent one of his workers out to John's house to check up on him. Both the neighbour and the worker tried knocking on John's bedroom window to wake him, but they quickly realised that there was blood on the front door. They quickly called authorities and police arrived at the scene by 8 a.m. The police went ahead and knocked down the back door and found John's dead body alongside Katherine's unconscious body laying next to him as a result of her taking a large number of pills. It was discovered that Katherine had stabbed John with a butcher's knife whilst he was sleeping. The police splatter told investigators that he probably woke up during the ordeal and tried to turn the bedroom light on before trying to escape out of the front door. It also showed that he managed to get outside but either stumbled backwards back inside the house or Katherine dragged his body back inside where he died in the hallway bleeding out. After the brutal murder, Katherine went into the town and withdrew $1,000 from John's ATM account. An autopsy was performed and it revealed that John had been stabbed at least 37 times in the front of his body and also the back of his body, with many wounds extending to his vital organs. Now I just want to pause here and say that to stab someone at least 37 times requires a lot of effort and a lot of anger, especially to penetrate through his organs. Katherine was that angry and enraged that she performed the most brutal and horrific murder. She must have been so enraged to perform this. Like, I can't imagine it. Anyway, so several hours went by and Katherine decided to skin John and hang him from a meat hook on the living room door. She then went ahead and decapitated him and even went as far as cooking his body parts. Katherine served the, quote, meat with baked potato, pumpkin, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy. She even set 2 places at the dining table for his 2 children with name cards in their places. The sick and twisted Katherine was planning to serve her husband to his children. How disgusting is that? It was also discovered that a 3rd plate was thrown out into the garden, and it's speculated that she attempted to eat the plate of food, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Like I say, it's just a speculation. It was never proven to be that, but that's what is widely speculated. When the police continued the search, they found John's head in a pot filled with vegetables that was still warm, which indicated to the investigators that Katherine had boiled the head and vegetables earlier on in the morning. After this, Katherine went and arranged John's body with the left arm draped over an empty bottle with his legs crossed. It was deemed in court that Katherine did this to be an act of defilement, demonstrating her contempt for John. Furthermore, Katherine had left a handwritten note written in blood stating that John had raped their children. However, these accusations were deemed to be groundless. So the trial came around on the 2nd of February 2001 and her plea to plead guilty on the account of manslaughter was denied. She was therefore charged of murdering John, which she pleaded not guilty. Her initial trial was meant to take place on the 23rd of July 2001, but was adjourned due to her counsellor's illness, and therefore the trial was rescheduled to take place on the 15th of October 2001. So the trial was set and the judge actually offered all 60 jury prospects the opportunity to be excused due to the horrific nature of the crime and the nature of the photographic evidence. And 5 of the prospects actually accepted this, which, to be honest, I do not blame them. I bet it would have been a really horrific case to sit through in trial, and I bet it would have been really scarring. So yeah, I do not blame them at all. So Katherine's attorney spoke with the judge and the judge actually adjourned to the following day. And the next day rolls around and Katherine actually changes her plea to guilty and the jury was dismissed. It was made public that on the previous day the judge was advised of the change in the plea to guilty, and it was revealed that he had adjourned in order to get a psychiatric assessment done overnight to see if Katherine knew the consequences of a guilty plea and to see if she was fit to submit the plea. It was said that Katherine's legal team were going to defend Katherine by claiming that she was suffering with amnesia and dissociation, and most psychiatrists actually did support this claim, but they did rule, however, that Katherine was sane. It was theorised in court that Katherine had planned to kill John when John called the police on the Sunday before his death, following an argument in which Katherine he'd taken out an apprehensive violence order against her. Sorry, I couldn't get my words out there. Once John had rung the police, Katherine went out and bought sexy lingerie and put a butcher's knife in the bedroom. She also made sure she had the right pots for his head and that the knives were sharp enough for the murder. Furthermore, at the trial, Katherine's family and ex-lovers came forward and said that Katherine was not a woman to be messed with, and they explained the violence that she was capable of. During the trial, Katherine was described as a vindictive and cruel woman, which I totally agree with. So the version of events that I'm going to tell you is what the majority of people believe to have happened. So after the couple had sex, Katherine inflicted the first 37 stab wounds. John then tried to escape, but Katherine managed to drag him back into the house and stab him a further 36 times. It is said that Katherine enjoyed the killing and got pleasure out of it. Once John was dead, Katherine then methodically proceeded to skin the corpse, taking off the entire skin, including the face, ears, scalp and neck, and she hung the skin on the entranceway of the house. Katherine then removed the head and proceeded to boil it with vegetables that she had prepared for the evening's dinner. She also served his buttocks as steaks for his children, and besides their dinner, she wrote a spiteful note, although I couldn't actually find what the note said, but yeah, it was said to be pretty spiteful. On the 8th of November 2001, the judge said that due to the nature of the crime and lack of remorse, Katherine was sentenced to life imprisonment and refused to affix a non-parole period and ordered her papers to be marked as never to be released. And this is the first time that this has ever been imposed on an Australian woman. In June 2006, Knight appealed the life sentence, claiming that a penalty of life in jail without the possibility of parole was too severe for the killing. However, in September, the judge denied this appeal, writing in his judgment, and I quote, "This was an appalling crime, almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society," end quote. And that concludes today's case, a completely crazy and sad case. The amount of people that Katherine hurt is unbelievable, and I feel like it all could have been prevented so many times, but it never was, which ultimately led to the killing of her husband and the attempted murder of her 2-month-old baby. Let me know your opinions and thoughts about this case in the comments down below. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in next week's video. Bye guys!